Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I have Dr. Abbey Durkin here today to talk about women's financial experience. We talk about a wide range of subjects, artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
things to deal with COVID. So I'm glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I always appreciate the fact that you push the envelope with such elegance and eloquence. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I achieved a PhD at the age of 25 from Stanford University. I was raised in poverty. I overcame immense hardship and decided to dedicate my science and my field to the work of trauma and preventing PTSD in civilians and military alike. And I've moved on to work in the government, and I've risen to the highest ranks possible within my field. And now I serve about 1,200 personnel stationed all over the world in U.S. embassies. And I also am the founder and CEO of my own company. And my passion is taking care of people and sustaining them through the life cycle of hardship that is their careers.
Okay. Yeah. But I guess from your view, like given that we're almost post-pandemic, I want to cross my fingers because we'll talk too early and things won't completely turn around. And with post-pandemic, like people are thinking about their new reality. You saw so many jobs get lost last year, and there's some that are not going to come back. How do you mentally get yourself in a position to move forward?
Yes.
What are you talking to people?
Yes. So the topic of today was oriented around women's financial experience, and so it's through that lens. I'd like to talk about three things kind of on this spectrum. So within the pandemic, I saw several statistics nationally and internationally, as well as I've seen these things manifest within my own personal workspace as a female CEO, and as a member of senior decision-making body, where women especially were hit very, very hard by COVID. And this is not the headline, because this is the headline for a long time, where women especially were kind of left behind in a way during the pandemic to do the care and feeding and rearing of children and make sure that everybody was in school virtually, that they took on homeschooling activities. And someplace, somewhere, there is a statistic that does need to be updated, but there is a statistic about the level of income that was lost by women basically retracting from the workplace and focusing all of their attentions on the home front to sustain it. So that's kind of an immediate concern of women in finance, is that they may have been upward mobile, they may have been climbers, and they may have been ambitious, but then suddenly they find themselves, because of an international pandemic, pulled back to a level that made sense 100 or 200 years ago. And that is that is financially and economically devastating, and it's also professionally devastating to women who want to go and do things and achieve things at the same level as everybody else. And time and time again, we've shown that has been true, both in the STEM fields as well as in medical and economics, and everywhere that you look. The second wave really comes into how reintegrate.
Talking about the new reality and some of the changes in household structure, economics, when it comes to the loss of jobs, dramatic loss of jobs, and reorienting our workspace to be a place where we all live and work at the same time. So what is the impact of that reality now, psychologically and foundationally now at this point?
Well, from the female perspective, it has disproportionately affected women in the workplace. There has been statistic after statistic splashed across the news pages from just about every outlet available. So I actually enjoy that because it's a nonpartisan fact that it has disproportionately affected women. You can go to Rutgers, BBC, CNN, Fox, whatever you want, and it will show that the economic impact on women during this pandemic has been disproportionate. That they have had to take more job losses, they've had to recuse themselves from different professional positions to take care of children, take care of the households, and there's not a whole lot of recompense for those women doing those things. There's not a tremendous amount of recognition that comes with that particular sacrifice. And just like in when you set up dominoes and you watch them fall, when you withdraw yourself from the workplace, that can lead to loss of opportunity for professional advancement, for continuing education, for consideration for leadership roles once reconstitution does happen in the workforce. And so having seen it from the female perspective on multiple fronts, both as an entrepreneur and also as a senior executive myself, it is a very tangible, real thing to see. So, initially the first burn, if you will, of the pandemic was the recalling of women to the home front, which effectively removed them from the workplace. But if I could add a silver lining, a trend that I have noticed is that within that space, there has been a surge of interest from women in day trading. There have been a lot of women who have been very interested in the stock market and in Wall Street and in the intermission between students going to school and kids in virtual learning. They're asking those questions about the stock market. So can you speak to that at all? Is that a trend you've seen as well?
That is a good observation. I would have to say I totally agree. I would say most of my clients who are initiating these conversations with me are women, or they're women in a household, they're couples, and they're pushing the envelope. They're pushing the conversation forward, and it's exciting, I guess, because I have daughters as well. I have a 14-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. And I want them engaged, and I want to be doing something on the side for a Girl Scout troop, but making sure that they are part of that conversation, they're taking control of their lives and being a big part of these major decisions is important to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting. And I've heard in some countries they even have a different philosophy. They have in certain Scandinavian countries they have leave that's exactly the same, mandatory for men and women. They have things that they legislate to make changes. Is that the answer? Is it more of each individual being more active in making sure that if my wife has something to do, that I'm taking the kids out and just like making that decision on an individual basis? Or do you think corporations are kind of hamstrung to focus on stakeholders and not necessarily look at gender? And I'm saying a lot, but I'm saying it in other ways. Like, what is the answer? What are some of the things creatively that we can do as a society?
Okay, so the answer from a strictly corporate perspective is, what is the thing that is going to generate the most interest and the most profit in a given company? What is going to draw the most clients? What is going to minimize risk and losses? And regardless of company or culture, if you have someone on your team that brings a perspective that is on trend, that is the next big thing, it doesn't matter the color, race, creed, or socioeconomic status of that particular employee. That is going to be le cause célèbre, is going to be the joie du jour. It will be the thing that corporation celebrates in advance and exalts. The issue comes in where you, not you personally, but do you as a corporation provide that bandwidth for those employees to succeed, whether they're hamstrung because of the pandemic and they're working remotely from home and they have other obligations, both male and female. And this also includes the postnatal recovery, right, for both men and women, and transgender couples who decide to adopt. Anybody across the spectrum that introduces a new life into their lives, that is a significant event. And it involves both parties equally engaged in making sure that that life gets off to the best start possible. It doesn't matter the gender. But within that scope, when you look at it just from a corporate perspective, you know, what is the availability of that particular corporate talent to engage? And that corporate talent and that ability to engage is 100% contingent upon leadership's support of the home front. So here the pandemic has forced us into a conversation where they can either support people who are dealing with home front issues like homeschooling, virtual schooling, adoption, all the things that go with being a good parent, and then marrying that up. And it's colloquially, it's referred to as work-life balance, right? But this is a totally different era of work-life balance. And so the corporations that are going to succeed in this pandemic, or hopefully, as you say, knock on wood, post-pandemic environment, are the ones that can incorporate the variety and the multitude of family situations that have emerged or have been affected during this pandemic. And that it sets the foundation for employee loyalty, regardless of what's going on in the family. So if you feel like your leadership cares about what you're doing on the home front, about, you know, you're bringing a new life into the world from whatever ways, means, process that you have, that they respect that they value that they're going to give you the time to integrate that new life into your family, and that they trust and value you as an employee, then that gives you the bandwidth cognitively to flourish and contribute to that particular corporation.
That makes a lot of sense. And there's been a slow move in corporate America to make that change. And in my industry, we're looking at proxies and making sure that there is a certain diversity in board leadership, and even mandating some of these changes, or making sure that there's guidance provided to shareholders during votes. Does government play a role in this? Do you think that has to be a part of the equation?
It absolutely has to be, because, I mean, when you look domestically, the role of government, one of the benefits of government is that regardless of gender, the pay scale is the pay scale, and it's publicly available information. You're not having these secret water cooler conversations of how much did you make and did you get a bonus, and wow, they got a bigger bonus than I did. What's up with that? I did more than they did. Or that guy has narcolepsy and he falls asleep at his desk and he got a $5,000 bonus. What happened to me? So the benefit of, you know, being in like a government or a public sector job is that your salary is publicly available and it's no secret. But government as a whole, in terms of its interrelatability with corporations around the world, different countries, economic sanctions or incentives, women absolutely have to have a seat at the table because of their relatability, because of the different skills that they provide. It is all one in the same package. So we have to be cognizant that there is a domestic focus and then there's also an international focus. And you can't make progress if you exclude a group that potentially represents one of the stakeholders that you're trying to do business with.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And right now, the big issue as well is access to credit, access to capital. If you're a small business owner, you want to go ahead and you want to start a new business. Things have changed a lot in the last 30, 40 years. And I have this little bit of an anecdote, and that prior to 1974, there wasn't gender, legal gender rights from a financial standpoint. So a lot of cases, there were people who got married, the husband may have put their name on the deed, they passed away, and then next thing you know, I've run into multiple cases in the last year where wife buries their husband, they go and they look at their finances, they have this debt, they're not on the deed at all. And so I think that we have to open up this conversation to also understand like the cultural impact over the last couple of decades of what men need to do on the side of the equation. So I can't talk. We can't just talk about what women need to do for equality. We also have to make sure that men are also doing their part. Where are we falling short?
So I'm jumping out of my skin. I'm interrupting you, and I'm so sorry. But I am so glad that you brought this up, because women who are dipping their toes into the field of entrepreneurship or into the field of finance or into the field of being their own boss, there are some minefields out there. And I'll relay a vignette just as you relayed one to me. I don't like the word victim, because I didn't end up becoming a victim, but I was preyed upon by a person who had represented themselves as a business consultant. And the way that they approached me, because I was a female entrepreneur, I'm a female founder and CEO of a B2B consulting firm. They said, wouldn't you like to make a better life for your son? Now, would they have said that to a man? They really went straight to my heart. And for female entrepreneurs and individuals who are in business, they have different sets of vulnerability when they first start wading into this marketplace. So what I would say for men who I've worked predominantly in male-dominated environments where I've been the only female, I've been the youngest, I've been a minority, and you look at me and you think that I'm white, but I'm actually Israeli, and so I'm at the table, sitting there going, oh, okay. But what I have found is that the very best men that I've worked with have been compassionate mentors, where they have pulled me aside and said, oh, Abbey, you might want to think about this, you might want to think about that, or maybe try presenting yourself this way, or maybe minimize that aspect. And it was never done in a patriarchal or pandering manner. It was done with, I want to lift you up to the highest potential that you can be. And here's my wisdom that I'm imparting on you based on my experience in the C-suite world, in the executive world. You have the potential to go there. But you might be leading with too much of this, or you might want to lessen that or bring that aspect of yourself forward. So men have been absolutely amazing in my life in terms of mentoring, shaping, and helping me become the best version of myself. Not anti-female. I'm a female everywhere I go, and I represent myself that way. But bringing out aspects of myself, because one thing that I've told other executives that I myself have mentored, it doesn't matter how well you think you say it, it matters how well the audience receives it. And that translates to gender too. So it doesn't matter, if you tell me to do something, I'm going to receive it differently. But if you take the time to understand my learning process and how receptive I am to what you have to say, you as being a good mentor are going to change what you say and how you say it in order to get through to me, because you believe in me as an employee. So that's, I guess, a long-winded answer to your question. So I hope it makes sense. That's kind of what's worked for me.
It does. It does a lot. And, I always ask, because like I said, I have two daughters. I really make sure that I'm providing a great influence in an also area for them to succeed and try and fail.